Yes, I debated, about who to read tonight because there's several really fabulous poets we have not read yet, but my heart just has been heavy, like a lot of other people's hearts, and all I could think of for the balm was Rumi. So I know we've fallen back on Rumi several times, but I just couldn't find anything any better. So I decided to give in to the balm, right? Yeah, thumbs up. I appreciate that, Gail. I just decided to give in to the balm and let's pour it on to the wound. And Gail, this group has been pretty steady in coming. So they've heard me discuss, Rumi's life and the events. I'm assuming you're pretty familiar with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, a wonderful choice. I mean, how can you go wrong? I mean,
right. Right.
Wonderful.
Right. Agreed. So I'm going to open with a poem that I really love. And Telly, nice to see you. Glad you're here. This one's called Inhale Autumn. And it's from my favorite book of poetry, the Big Red Book, Rumi's Poetry of Shams. Union is a watery way. In an eye, the point of light. In the chest, the soul. Do not cover your chest. Stay open there. Someone asks me, what is love? Do not look for an explanation. Dissolve into me and you will know when it calls. Respond. Walk out as a lion, as a rose. Inhale autumn, long for spring. You that change the dull field, who give conversation to damaged ears, make dying alive, award guardianship to the wandering mind. You who race the five senses at night, who give the lover heroic strength, hear what someone said. Lose your life if you seek eternity. The master who teaches us is absolute light, not this visibility.
I, of course, got a phone call in the middle of that.
Oh, you'll have to go back and listen to it, or else I can email it to you. I have it.
Well,
I have a copy of it. Okay, good. Put a little note in the sidebar there to remind me. And what, dear?
I'll do a skywriter.
I was thinking about you, Diane, when I was choosing some of these poems, because one of the things that I've noticed about Rumi's poetry is that it can be a little bit hard to understand. I mean, sometimes I sort of scratch my head and cannot figure out exactly what he means, and I'm pretty good at deciphering poetry. So I was thinking about you, Diane, when I was choosing these, because feel free to say something after a poem if something doesn't make sense. Anybody in the room, if something doesn't make sense, just say something and we can maybe decipher it together.
I set the bar for the standards.
What did you say?
I said, I'm glad I set the bar for the.
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to call you out like that.
It's one of the reasons why I gravitate to this is to try and break through the denseness. And yes. I just got a recording. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. And you've been doing a great job with that, by the way. And I really admire your perseverance, because a lot of people would not have gone to the trouble to try and break through the glass ceiling of poetry. Because, I mean, there are certain people who just literally do not understand it at all. And good for you.
Well, SJ, I met SJ. She doesn't really have a horn.
Hey, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a hilarious photograph.
And you know what's sad, SJ, I said you reminded me of Tracey. So this picture of you is Just
I
perfect.
definitely don't look like that, but I could look like that. So, oh, I see you. Nice. Welcome. Happy that you're here. So, this poem is called "Stay in a Listening Posture." What is wrong with this handsome face? Does it mirror your heart's purity? Before you crawl in a sack, ask the sack owner what is in it. Make him talk, then catch the fragrance. Has he taken in roses and tulips and jasmine? When he speaks of scripture, do you feel the presence of David, Noah, Jesus, and Moses, each with a distinct essence? When he does evening prayer, do you feel Muhammad coming near, that cleansing desert night wind? If you want to know who someone is, what is flowing through or not flowing, stay in a listening posture. Close your eyes inside your companion's shadow, but always remember you have your own source. Never leave that. Explore the inner foundation, stone by stone. Look at this 3-stringed instrument and that piece of amber there, and whatever is beside the amber, a drum. The outer is only decoration. Do not become a scholar of straw. Do not be the farmer who throws the seeds up instead of down and tries to harvest a storm. So good. Any comments?
Could you read it again? It's just so nice to hear it more than once.
Yeah, agreed.
I agree.
What is wrong with this handsome face? Does it mirror your heart's purity? Before you crawl in a sack, ask the sack owner what's in it. Make him talk, then catch the fragrance. Has he taken in roses and tulips and jasmine? When he speaks of scripture, do you feel the presence of David, Noah, Jesus, and Moses, each with a distinct essence? When he does evening prayer, do you feel Muhammad coming near, that cleansing desert night wind? If you want to know who someone is, what is flowing through or not flowing, stay in a listening posture. Close your eyes inside your companion's shadow, but always remember, you have your own source. Never leave that. Explore the inner foundation, stone by stone. Look at this 3-stringed instrument and that piece of amber there, and whatever is beside the amber, a drum. The outer is only decoration. Do not become a scholar of straw. Do not be the farmer who throws seed up instead of down and tries to harvest a storm. Yeah.
What's the name of that poem?
It's called Stay in a Listening Posture. And since you came on late, SJ, it's from the Big Red Book, which is Rumi's poetry about Shams, and my favorite source of Rumi's poetry. And it was translated by Coleman Barrows, who we are going to.
Yeah, thank you. He lives in my town. I know him.
Oh, you live in Athens?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I met him, I told this story before, but I have to tell the story about, I met Coleman Barks at Malaprop's bookstore, our favorite bookstore here in Asheville. And I was just so excited about meeting him because, I'd been reading Rumi for a while, and, he's got these big rosy cheeks and this big white beard and this little belly, and he just looks like Santa Claus to me. And in a good way, like Santa Claus is a good thing. And so I was last in line, and I wanted to say something to inspire him and to say thank you for coming. He was signing my book. And so I said, something like, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for coming. I know it's a lot to travel. And you're just so adorable. You remind me of Santa Claus. Well, apparently this really upset him. because from what I've heard, he thinks of himself as quite the lover, and so Santa Claus was not in his view of himself. Anyway, there was my moment meeting Coleman Barks. Upsetting him. I just really still can't believe that happened, you know.
I know his sister,
What?
or I did know his sister when she lived in Durham. She's a writer.
Oh, that's interesting to know.
I only heard a little bit of what you said.
Sorry.
Do you want me to repeat it?
I gleaned, because what was happening is that my car, I was driving away from a Wi-Fi source, and Zoom just does what it wants to during that time, so I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
But like, I gleaned that you called him Santa and he didn't appreciate it.
Yes, he was very offended because apparently he thinks of himself as quite the ladies' man. And,
oh, yes, honey.
And so this did not fit into his perspective of himself as being a ladies' man, you know, Santa Claus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't want to know too much about, you know, my heroes because I don't want to be crestfallen.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Just one of those things. Any comments about that wonderful poem or Rumi?
I wanted to share something, but if someone else wants to go first.
Oh, go ahead.
I really liked the part about, yeah, this external stuff is cool and all, but never forget that inner place and explore it like brick by brick or whatever it said. And it was just really encouraging because right now tonight I had forgotten that, and I started believing that some outside thing was going to make me okay, and so it just came at a really perfect time for me. So thank you. I really needed to hear that.
Absolutely. It's why I return to poetry again and again, because I too so often forget that it's not the outer world that makes my life, that really is the inner world. And it's so easy to forget that. We are so surrounded by voices that would like us to forget it, or they themselves have never remembered it. And so I think we need, I don't know about you, but I need constant reminders. And poetry is really one of the most fluid voices for me around that subject. And
yeah, I have a built-in forgetter.
Built-in forgetter. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and it's really why I wanted to choose Rumi tonight. I've just, my heart's been feeling grief, and so I thought, well, no better place to go than Rumi in these moments. We're actually going to hear Coleman Barks reading some Rumi in a moment. I'm going to read one more, and then we're going to turn it over to some videos of Coleman Barks reading, which are so lovely. This one is called Eyes That Love Sunset. Here comes July. Who likes to hear the stories travelers tell? Those that journey in full prostration, not the self-important pilgrims. Listen to one who moves as he or she is led to, with no complaining, who lives in the great heart, like Damascus on the Syrian plain. Harvest comes with August, then Ramadan silence and fasting, with eyes that love sunset. Tell someone in the middle of health and success, this will change to a bout with malaria. No one but angels know who will prosper and who will not. Remember Muhammad's boot with the snake inside? It is good to be quiet. Say less. Those obsessed with gaining recognition do nothing but talk the entire day.
It's beautiful. Can we hear it again?
Yes.
Yeah, I was having a fight with my cat. Can you?
Yes. Here comes July, who likes to hear the stories that travelers tell, those that journey in full prostration, not the self-important pilgrims. Listen to one who moves as he or she is led to, with no complaining, who lives in the great heart, like Damascus on the Syrian plain. Harvest comes with August, then Ramadan, silence and fasting, with eyes that love sunset. Tell someone in the middle of health and success, this will change to a bout with malaria. No one but angels know who will prosper and who will not. Remember Muhammad's boot with the snake inside? It is good to be quiet. Say less. Those obsessed with gaining recognition do nothing but talk the entire day. I was meeting with a person from the yoga group, the meditation group I went to, and she and I were talking about humility, and I was sharing with her that the greatest people that I've ever met in my life have actually been the humblest. And I think that's just a good reminder, that you can achieve greatness, but still hold humility at the same time. Sometimes they seem contradictory to each other, but really they're not at all. And this poem is such a great reminder of that. Any comments?
The bout with malaria jumped out at me. It's very specific to me. I mean, it's a thing. I had a friend, I guess maybe in the 80s, who got malaria in Africa and came back, and it's a cycle. You have it and then you don't. So you go to the doctor, you don't have anything, and then you come home and then you have something. And it's finally he went to a pediatrician at Duke who had been in the Army and had seen it. But it's that's a whole big description. I mean,
right. Yeah.
It's just but Rumi, that's what Rumi is a whole big description. The snake in the boot, and Ramadan, and it just, every part of it is, I've certainly had close friends that celebrated Ramadan, and everything is oriented to that. So it's just nice to be reminded. He pulls it together so nicely. I mean, it's obviously Rumi, but it's translated by Coleman Barks.
Yeah. I have a tenant that just moved out. They bought a house. They're a young couple. She had malaria as a baby because her parents were missionaries in Africa. And her house was always a complete and total absolute wreck. And they left it a wreck, like crazy wreck. And I normally would have been pretty furious, but I just kept saying to myself, imagine having malaria as a baby and then being deaf as an adult, because I just kept, reminding myself of what she must have been suffering through. So I just cleaned it up and moved on. Yeah. Welcome. Oh, no, you changed your thing. You look very different than your filtered picture.
How rude.
I know, isn't that horrible?
Okay. Take the heart off and
Okay, we are going to move to hearing Coleman Barks read Rumi, and I always struggle for a second to share sound. Share, here we go.
I see my beauty in you. I see my beauty in you. I become a mirror that cannot close its eyes to your longing. My eyes wet with yours in the early light. My mind every moment giving birth, always conceiving always in the 9th month, always the come point. How do I stand this? We become these words we say, a wailing sound moving out into the air. These thousands of worlds that arise from nowhere, how does your face contain them? I'm a fly in your honey. Then closer, a moth caught in flames allure. Then empty sky stretched out in homage. I see my beauty in you. I see my beauty in you.
Any comments?
It was exquisite. He was young. It was exquisite.
That's what the
The
pre-Santa
music-
Santa Claus days.
The music added to, I don't ever think about poetry needing, and it didn't need it, but
Right.
I can see why he did it, and it was lovely. And it's nice to hear a poet read their own works. There's something about a poet reading their own works, and you hear it in their language, and I mean, and
Yes, there is something about that. Yeah. Pretty much 90% of the time you see Coleman Brooks reading, he's reading to music. And apparently that is the norm in the Middle East for poets to read to music. And Robert Bly came to Asheville and read his translations of Hafez, and I saw him performing to a band. The bass player from that band was actually playing in this segment that we just watched of Coleman Barks, and Elliot Wadomian from Free Planet Radio. But yeah, that is a Middle Eastern tradition, and I think Coleman Barks probably has really borrowed that from seeing that when he was over in the Middle East so many times. I love it, totally love it. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but we hear poetry on a different part of our brain than we read it. And so I think for a lot of people, one of the reasons why poetry is so indecipherable is that you really have to have access to both sides of your brain. And a lot of people just don't have access to that unless they really work at it. But music is one of the things that synchronizes the left and the right hemispheres of the brain faster than anything. So I think it's a great combination with poetry in particular, because it helps build that bridge. Yeah, love the music. I don't know where you live, Gail, but I live here in Asheville, and when I perform poetry, and I always perform it with music. I just feel like it makes such a difference.
I live in the Chapel Hill, Durham area.
Oh, you do? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna read one and then we're gonna hear some Coleman Barks again. This one is called As Fish Drink the Ocean. This world eats men and women. We become ground, and yet God sends us here to eat the whole universe. Earth tries to work a sorcery on us, saying tomorrow, tomorrow. But we outwit that by enjoying this now. Say we were born from invisible beings that gather in the middle of the night. Say that is why we love the night so. We love and taste the wine of being human as fish drink the ocean. Do you think that alters the sea? How one values the beloved depends on the state of the lover. What are you worth? Which candle draws you to die in its light? Shams of Tabriz is the act of seeing the one who looks and the sun itself. There is no way to understand such a presence. I'll read it again. This world eats men and women. We become ground, and yet God sends us here to eat the whole universe. Earth tries to work a sorcery on us, saying tomorrow, tomorrow. But we outwit that spell by enjoying this now. Say we were born from invisible beings that gather in the middle of the night. Say that is why we love the night so. We love and taste the wine of being human as fish drink the ocean. Do you think that alters the sea? How one values the beloved depends on the state of the lover. What are you worth? Which candle draws you to die in its light? Shams of Tabriz is the act of seeing the one who looks and the sun itself. There is no way to understand such a presence.
I feel like I've won the lottery when I get to hear a poem twice, a beautiful poem twice. It's like, oh.
That's a great point. I listened to David White read, and he always reads poems twice. He actually will repeat it sort of midway in the poem. He'll just go back to the beginning and then he'll keep going and then he'll do it again, maybe 2 or 3 times. And I've often thought that I should try to do it because I too feel like you do, that I actually can sink deeper into the poem when I hear it a second time. Yeah. Because there's so much to hear a poem. And then you're having all these thoughts, and then you have any images, and then there's all those going on in your head, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I just missed something, and then you have to run after the poem to get back to it. And when you hear it twice, you can kind of put all the threads together. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out, Gail.
And you would never want to hear a crummy poem twice.
Yeah, right. No,
Like,
not at all.
So always know that if I ask for it again, it's because it's lovely, because all poems are not lovely.
Well said. So well said. Yes, with you on that. Okay, we're going to move over to hear Coleman Barks read again.
In May of, no, it was in March of 2005, the State Department decided in their wisdom that they would send me to Afghanistan as the first speaker there in 25 years. And so I went and found myself saying this next poem in the Ministry of Culture. Now, I don't think we have a Ministry of Culture, do we know? Do we have a culture? No, in front of where would it be? It might be here, you know, if we had one. But we don't have a Ministry of Culture. So I realized that everybody in the room, all the cabinet ministers were saying the poem out loud in the original, which was very encouraging to me that they could recognize that it was one of their poems. And they all knew it. And they got through, and they started arguing in Farsi, of course. And I asked my translator, I said, "What, should I leave?" And I said, "No, this is very interesting. They're arguing about the metaphor of drunkenness in this poem of Rumi's, and about the use of wine in Hafez's poems." So, just an unthinkable kind of thing to happen in an American cabinet. But all the Bush cabinet members are arguing about Stevens and, Robert Lowell or something. Yeah. It's not going to happen. So anyway, the little wiry man cabinet minister jumped up and said something, and everybody said, "Oh, sure, that's the way that goes. That's the way that solves that argument." And what they had said, what he had said, he said, "Inside this one Rumi poem, there are 16 little drunken Hafezes running around." So what that meant evidently was that Rumi's view of ecstatic love, drunkenness in this poem, and Hafez's, it contains, can embrace Hafez's tweaking of the imams about the use of wine. So we're going to translate this into the blues. You might as well go all the way over from Shiraz to Macon. All right. All day I think about it, and then at night I say it. Where did I come from? And what am I supposed to be doing? I have no idea. My soul is from elsewhere, I'm sure of that, and I intend to end up there. Oh. This drunkenness began in some other tavern. When I get back around to that place, I'll be completely sober. Meanwhile, I'm like a bird from another continent, sitting in this aviary. The day is coming when I fly off. But who is it now in my ear who hears my voice, who says words with my mouth, who looks out with my eyes? What is the soul?
What is the soul?
What is the soul?
Tell me, come.
I cannot stop asking.
Come on, brother.
I can't stop asking.
Please tell me.
I can't stop.
Come on, brother.
Oh, the soul is this music. Oh,
you got it down.
Oh, we got it down, baby. Oh, If I could taste one sip of an answer, I could break out of this prison for drunks.
Let's break out, brother. Come on.
I didn't leave. I didn't come here of my own accord, and I can't leave that way. I didn't come here of my own accord, and I can't leave that way. Whoever brought me here will have to take me home.
Take me home.
Whoever brought me here will have to take me home.
Take me home.
This poetry, I never know what I'm going to say. I don't plan it. When I'm outside the saying of it, I get very quiet and rarely speak at all. Shams Tabriz, if you would show your face to me again, I could flee the imposition of this life. brought me here. You'll have to take me home.
Take me home.
Mhm.
Take me home. Come on, take me home.
Take me home.
Take me home. Take me home.
Take me home.
Take me home.
Take me home.
Take me home.
Take me home.
Take me home.
Oh, take me home.
Oh, take me home.
Oh, take me home.
Oh, take me home.
I hope you got a finish to this.
Oh, take me home.
Take me
Oh,
home,
take me
baby.
home. Come on now. Oh, take me home.
It done took me home.
Hey, take me home.
Take me home now.
Come on, baby. Take me home.
Whoever brought me here.
Take me home.
Whoever brought me here. Gonna take me home.
Take me home.
Gonna take me home.
Take me home.
Gonna take me home.
Take me home.
Gonna take me home.
Okay. That was fun. I don't think I've ever
Real
seen,
fun.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone do that before. That was really fun. Any comments?
Yeah, that was a treat.
Yeah.
Easier for me to take it in with a beat.
What?
It's easier for me to take it in.
I can't, for some reason, I can't hear you.
I think it's because
Something's breaking up or I'm not sure what's happening.
I have to step over to I'm sharing the sound system with Terry. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I said I could hear it better with a beat.
Oh, interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah. I'm not sure what that means, but good that you noticed it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
that
was
call.
so fun.
Yeah,
So fun.
the call and response was perfect.
Wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was great.
Thank you.
I don't think I've ever seen that before. I'm going to read one more and then we're going to hear Coleman Bartz read. That might have been the last one. Let me check. Yes, I have one more and then we're going to hear some Ukrainian poetry. This one is called No Room for Form. On the night when you cross the street from your shop and your house to the cemetery, you will hear me hailing you from inside the open grave, and you will realize how we have always been together. I am the clear consciousness core of your being, the same in ecstasy as in self-hating fatigue. That night when you escape the fear of snake bite and all irritation with the ants, you will hear my familiar voice, see the candle being lit, smell the incense, the surprise meal fixed by the lover inside all of your other lovers. This heart tumult is my signal to you, igniting in the tomb. Don't fuss with the shroud and the graveyard road dust. Those get ripped open and washed away in the music of our finally meeting. And don't look for me in a human shape. I am inside your looking. No room for form with love this strong. Beat the drum and let the poets speak. This is a day of purification for those who are already mature and initiated into what love is. No need to wait until we die. There is more to want here than money and being famous and bites of roasted meat. Now, what shall we call this new sort of gazing that is opened in our town, where people sit quietly and pour out their glancing like light, like answering?
And again?
Yeah. On the night when you cross the street from your shop and your house into the cemetery, you will hear me hailing you from inside the open grave, and you will realize how we have always been together. I am the clear consciousness core of your being, the same in ecstasy as in self-hate, fatigue. That night, when you escape the fear of snake bite and all irritation with the ants, you will hear my familiar voice, see the candle being lit, smell the incense, the surprise meal fixed by the lover inside all your other lovers. This heart tumult is my signal to you igniting in the tomb. So don't fuss with the shroud and the graveyard road dust. Those get ripped open and washed away in the music of our finally meeting. And don't look for me in a human shape. I am inside your looking. No room for form with love this strong. Beat the drum and let the poets speak. This is a day of purification for those who are already mature and initiated into what love is. No need to wait until we die. There is more to want here than money and being famous and bites of roasted meat. Now, what shall we call this new sort of gazing that is opened in our town, where people sit quietly and pour out their glancing like light, like answering? So good. I'm reminded when he says, I am inside, you're looking, no room for form with love this strong. I'm reminded, that years ago when we started to understand what quantum physics meant, we heard from scientists that simply by observing the thing that they're testing, it automatically changes the thing they're testing because they're observing it. And that's such a significant piece of information. I think, it means, it sort of shows how connected we all are and how pure subjectivity is just an impossibility. And I was at a meditation retreat last month, and someone was talking about how they had this experience in their meditation and they wanted to have that experience again. So they were looking for that experience. And of course, by looking for it, it didn't come because they were looking for it. They were having an expectation about it. And it was such a good reminder that looking for something can actually take us outside the experience of it, which was my takeaway from this lovely phrase that he said, I am inside your looking. I'm beyond the looking itself.
And am I correct that you're reading from The Soul of Rumi?
No, it's from the Big Red Book.
Okay. It's called
And
the Big Red Book.
This was his collection of poems specifically about shams.
Okay.
And they're by far, I think I've got, 15 books of Rumi, mostly from Coleman Barks, but also from a few other translators. I have to say that this is absolutely my favorite.
What is shams?
He was, so Rumi prayed very hard for a soul friend to come. And one day a man rode in on a donkey, and he was sort of like a crazy wisdom master, if you know what that is. Someone who was very disheveled and dirty and was sort of beyond convention. And he and Rumi met, and they instantly recognized each other, and Rumi knew that this was the person that he had prayed for. So they became best friends, and it really transformed Rumi's life, so much so that they would lock each other in a house and not let anyone come in for days. And people would have to drop food off for them because they just did not want to be disturbed in the time that they spent together. It was very difficult for Rumi's family and for his disciples what was happening, because Rumi was very famous in his lifetime and was extremely well thought of, and he was the head of a monastery of several hundred Sufi monks. And Shams really wanted to break through his respectability and his sense of himself into something deeper. So he would do things like tell Rumi to go and get some wine from the wine shop and bring it to him. And Rumi was not allowed to touch wine. because he was a Muslim. And anybody would do it because he trusted Shams so much, and their love was so deep. And people would see Rumi with this bottle of wine, and then of course, you know, tongues would start to wag. And so that's exactly what Shams wanted. He wanted to go past all the surface level of what we think is important. This was very upsetting to Rumi's family, and so upsetting to them that his son and several of his disciples either killed Shams or they harmed him so badly that he left town and never came back, and probably died someplace else, because I mean, he would had to have died not to come back. Rumi knew this. He knew that his son and his disciples were responsible for the death of his beloved. And he chose to forgive them, and he chose to continue on as the head of the monastery. But it was in Rumi's substantial grief that he started to write poetry. And he did not write poetry until Shams died. So poets often speak about this, that it really takes some kind of breaking open in order to write poetry. So if you look at the work of Hafez, for example, he had to suffer a lot of great things. If you look at the work of Mary Oliver, she was sexually abused by her father as a child. There are a lot of really famous poets who have suffered pretty heavily, and I think it's pretty commonly believed in the world of poetry that you have to have suffered on some level pretty deeply in order to write really great poetry for whatever reason. So this was his opening to writing. And that's who Shams of Tabriz is. Anyone want to add anything to that?
Did they have a concept of homosexuality back then?
Well, homosexuality has probably existed since the beginning of time, I suspect, but it's very frowned upon in the Muslim faith. You can be stoned to death for, you know, being caught being homosexual. Therefore, there is a lot of, you know, backstreet homosexuality happening in the Middle East. I have an Arabian friend who was in an arranged marriage and was so happy about it. And the night before their marriage, her husband said to her, "You won't be seeing much of me after the marriage." He was gay. And that's why he married her, so that his family wouldn't know. I think there's some, of course, there's some speculation that they, you know, were sexually involved. I really don't think it matters. Like, I just don't think it's what this whole thing is about. It's about a very deep love. And so for me, it's like a non-subject for me, whether they were gay or not gay. It's just not the point of the whole thing. You know, we don't know. We don't have the answer to that, but there is speculation, but in both, you know, both camps.
Hello there.
Yes. Hi.
Hi, my name is Fred. Well, my real name is Jeremy, but I go by, well, you can call me Jeremy or
I think we lost him. Okay, we're going to read one more poem, and then we're going to go into some Ukrainian poetry before we end. We have just a few more minutes. Oh, well, you know, debate. Okay, I have one more Coleman Bartz, so maybe we'll just do that instead, because that's so enjoyable. I'm not sure. I think maybe he wasn't meant to be here and found himself here. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay.
Rumi said this: just being in a body and sentient is cause for rapture. It's also cause for embarrassment and shame. Just being, but mainly it's cause for rapture. This is how a human being can change. There's a worm addicted to eating grape leaves. Suddenly, he wakes up. Call it grace, whatever. Something wakes him, and he's no longer a worm. He's the entire vineyard. and the orchard too, the fruit, the trunks, a growing wisdom and joy that doesn't need to devour. Find your place and close your eyes so your heart can start to see. When you give up being self-absorbed, your being becomes a great community. Find your place and close your eyes so your heart can start to see. When you give up being self-absorbed, your being becomes a great community.
I love that. You stop being so self-absorbed, your being becomes a great community. That is amazing. Tilly, are you saying something? No. So there were 3 poems that a friend sent me that are Ukrainian, and they're a little difficult to read. So I'm just going to read one because the other ones are I think just so hard. This poet it's a translation from a woman who's the director of Slavic languages at Stanford, Yuliya Ilychuk. It doesn't say who wrote the poem. It just says who translated it from the Ukrainian. And it doesn't have a title. To hold a needle of silence in your mouth, to stitch your words in white thread, to whimper while drowning in spit, to keep from screaming, spitting blood, to hold the water of a language on your tongue, which leaks like a rusty bucket, to mend things that are still useful, to sew crosses on the really weak spots, like bandages on the wounded in a hospital, to learn to search for the roots of a life that has yet to learn its name. The other ones were far more graphic, so I decided not to read them. Apparently, the Ukraine has seen wars recently, so they have contemporary poetry about it. Well, thank you all so much for your listening ear and for your contributions of comments and your questions and everything else. Really appreciate it. So nice to spend this time with you and Rumi. We're very fortunate. Gail, you're muted again.
It was a lovely hour. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
What's your name?
My name is Tracey Schmidt.
Tracey?
Yes.
Thank you, Tracey. I'm Jeremy. I was pleased to hear. What's that?
You're welcome.
I was pleased to hear your. Even though I joined about, 40 minutes in, 35 minutes in, I really did sink in. I really did sink in a lot of what I find to be the source of wisdom and input on life. Yeah. It's as if I read a book called a couple books, Myths and Legends of India, which talked about Mughal and the rulers of the conflicts between Hindi Muslim warfare in the India and in the Muslim countries, and then there's another book called Rasa Shastra, the science of life's creative forces, which talked a lot about many things, but all those books, including history that I've read, serve to show that with so many different with so many differences, or with so many different aspects of life, I don't even know if aspects is the word, but just the whole losing yourself
Yeah.
after self-absorption, or you know,
Yes.
if you don't, in order to know oneself, you have to kind of be a little
Yeah.
self-focused.
It's a great point, and I want to share a little story with you, and that is that when Rumi died, he was so loved by Hindus and Muslims and Jewish people and Christians that every major religion sent a representative to his funeral to honor him, and that was just unheard of. I mean, it's kind of unheard of today, actually, but I mean, it was really unheard of then. He exemplified the word unity and the mirror that we all hold up for each other as each other so beautifully and so loyally that happened. So thank you, Jeremy, for bringing that up.
Yeah,
Poetry is
thank
truly
you.
a great reminder that we're all connected and that we are.
I mean,
in fact, you know.
I mean, I don't want to touch upon it any further, but you know, the whole complexity of the whole.
Jeremy, we have to quit because it's 8 o'clock.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
Right.
I apologize. But thank you for coming in and being part of it today. I appreciate that. Everyone, Jay Baba, thank you so much. Blessings
Jai
this
Baba.
week.
Jai
Bye.
Baba.
Jai Baba.